Hey everybody, it's Jim here, and today's a really exciting day for me. I'm going to be unboxing one of the new Squier 40th Anniversary Jazzmasters. So you can see behind me, I'm a big offset guitar fan, and I've never played one of the newer Indonesian models, so I can't wait to see what this thing has on offer and how eventually it will compare with the American Vintage 65. But that's enough talking, let's open this box and check it out. This is a very, very, very good looking guitar. Now I'm really excited to get this guitar on the bench and have a closer look at it, but before we do so, I have to remind you, if you're not familiar with this channel, I am not sponsored. This is not something that is provided to me by Fender or Squier or any shop. This is just going to be a straight up objective review, just like it would be if you were to buy one of these, because I feel it's the best way to go about doing these things. It allows me to be completely honest and open with my thoughts on the instrument. So, let's have a look. Getting onto this guitar itself, traditional Jazzmaster as far as the body and the electronics go here. We do not have staggered pole piece pickups here. We have Alnico 5 magnets. We have a traditional rhythm circuit. What that means is, when you have the rhythm circuit engaged, it bypasses all of this stuff right here. So meaning you can have this switch wherever you wanted. It wouldn't matter as long as that is engaged. Independent volume and tone for that rhythm circuit right there as well. Flip it back down and you have full control via the three-way toggle switch right there. You have a Mustang bridge that is the correct radius. This is a 9.5-inch radius neck on it. And the only difference between this tremolo system in theory and one that comes on a higher end Jazzmaster or Jaguar style instrument, this does not have a lock on it, which would be apparent right there. This one just straight up bare bones. But as a whole, this thing looks fantastic. No signs of egregious error work as far as the quality control goes, but we'll get closer into that in a few moments. Now, one thing I really love about this guitar compared to a traditional Jazzmaster design is they have the truss rod adjustment at the top of the guitar, meaning unlike my American Vintage 65 where I'd have to remove the neck to adjust the truss rod, that's not the case. So that's a very nice quality and ease of life upgrade. Good job, Fender, for doing that. I know that a lot of purists may frown upon that, but as far as a day-to-day kind of thing, I think it's a welcome upgrade. Now, this is an actual bone nut according to the spec sheet. That's really, really cool. A lot of the Mexican guitars come with a synthetic bone nut. I know the made in Japan ones also come with a real bone nut. So the fact that this one, that's a Squier made in Indonesia, comes with a real bone nut, that's a big plus in my book. You have vintage frets here. How are the fret ends? They are a little rough. Not gonna lie to you. Nothing that can't be fixed and nothing that's so sharp that I would be, actually concerned about it, but they're not the smoothest in the whole world in that sense. As far as the actual scratchiness of them and basically how polished they are, they're pretty noisy. Yeah, you hear that? When you can hear a sound like that, it just basically means your frets just need to be polished a little bit. But that's why we have this. I'm actually going to be taking the strings off of this guitar. This is a product called Gorgamite. If you're not somebody that's a professional, this is the easiest thing in the whole world to use to polish frets, and I highly recommend, especially when you're buying a guitar under $1,000, having this around because it will make a gigantic difference in the playability of the instrument. Now we're going to be using our trusty fret guru to give a basic idea of how level the frets are. This is not going to be an exact science, however, this will give me a really solid foundation as to how well of a job they did at leveling these from the factory. A little high right there. That fret's a little high too. This one right here, which would be the 13th, 14th, 15th fret. Now, all things considered here, the fact that there was only 3 frets that were slightly higher than the rest of them, and that was only in specific spots on the fingerboard itself, I think that that's really, really acceptable and more than good enough, especially for a guitar that's $600. So good job on that. Alright, taking a look at the back of the headstock here, you have a really nice grain to this wood. It's very, very visually appealing here. You have gold vintage style tuners on, designed and backed by Fender, crafted in Indonesia. As far as the neck itself goes, this has a gloss finish on it, but it is not like they used to be on the kind of cheaper Fender models or Squier models where it was really, really caked on with gloss. This is done kind of just right in my humble opinion. This feels a lot nicer than the original classic vibe offset that I had, which was the Shell Pink Jaguar. This is very nice, and it's not something that I would be rushing to my kitchen to get a Scotch-Brite pad to kind of mitigate that kind of over-glossing, which can be known, and these guitars did have back in the day. But this one, great job. Alright, now that we got the strings off, I'm going to measure the neck thickness here at the 1st and the 12th frets. 0.87, 0.91 at the 12th fret. This is great news for me because I love when a neck is not paper thin. This one is kind of almost like a 60 slim taper from Gibson. If anything, it's a little bit thicker up here than one of those, even though it doesn't make it to the full thickness up here. Being 0.91, I really, really like that. With the modern radius, I think I'm gonna get along just fine with this guy after a setup. But now, let's take care of these frets. We're not going to show much of this. Just want to polish them up real nice. I mentioned the benefits of doing this earlier in the video, and I cannot recommend it enough whenever you get in a new guitar. Okay, we got the frets polished. I just want to show you guys here. That was on a brand new guitar. This is nothing new, and this should not be anything surprising if you've done this before, but it just goes to show the importance of not skipping this step because it really will make the guitar feel a lot better. It will make bends feel a lot smoother, and it just kind of cleans everything up. Now they have a really nice shine to them. All we got to do now is we're going to add some F1 oil to the fretboard. A little of this goes a long way. And there we have it. That extra 5 minutes of work is well worth it. Now we have a better conditioned fingerboard. We have frets that are polished. They're gonna feel so good to play. Again, the fret ends are not perfect, but I don't think they're going to be a major problem when we're playing it. But these little things can enhance your initial experience with any guitar, and I just can't stress enough how important they are, and you shouldn't skip stuff like this. Alright, I figured since we already have the strings off, I might as well have a look at the internals, but before we do so, I have to point out another thing here. This is supposed to be white, the tip of the tremolo arm. It kind of goes against the aesthetic of the instrument, having this be black. It's a little bit of a sore thumb, but just something I thought was worth noting here. Now, to remove this, it's simple. You take the bridge out, very easy, then you unscrew. So these are our electronics. The pickups are not the cloth wire, which is very surprising to me because even the Paranormal Cabronita thin line that we had, that one had cloth wired pickups. These are the kind of import spec, and as you can see, the rest of them are also in a similar way. You have the Alpha mini pots on this, so if you wanted to replace these though, just know you'd have to extend or widen the holes in the actual pickguard itself in order to accommodate the larger pots, but I'm not so sure we're gonna have to worry about that right now, and it's not something that I really wanted to focus on. I just kind of wanted to show you guys what's what as far as the internals of this instrument. As you can see, not really taped off or combined together extremely well, but it is grounded really well, which is a good thing to see. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this guitar is now restrung and ready to be demoed, but before we do that, I'm going to leave you with my first impressions before the sound clips kick in here. This guitar is really, really, really nice as far as the way it feels. It doesn't feel cheap, and that's something that I kind of felt with some of the other Squiers I had played previously. This one feels really well put together. The tuners have a very good ratio on them, much better than either of the Paranormals that we had in, whether it was the Baritone or the Cabronita thin line, so that's always a good sign here. Love the fact that the bone nut was cut pretty decently. This thing is holding tune really well after breaking in the strings. As far as the negatives go, there are a few little things here and there. When it comes to the aesthetics and the actual finish of it, I didn't focus too much in on the binding, but we're going to do that right now. Now, there are certain instances, such as what you're seeing right now, on the end of the actual neck itself. there's a little bit of bleed. These things happen. They can even happen on higher end guitars. It happens a little bit on this guitar, but it's not really the end of the world. If you compare that with the Squier H7, which is in the same exact price range, the guitar we previously demoed, this is a far better example of quality control. Now, I think it's around the 13th or 14th fret on the binding on the bass side of it. There is a little bit of a divot there, and that's something that I noticed when I was really working on the fingerboard itself and polishing the frets. I don't think it's going to really impact playability whatsoever, but it's something that I felt like needed to be noted. My favorite part about this guitar, having not played it yet, has to be the neck. Nice thickness to it. I was very, very pleasantly surprised by that. But you've heard enough of me talking, so let's hear what this thing sounds like. Alright, I just finished up the sound section of this demonstration. There's definitely some positives to this guitar, but there are a few negatives and critiques that I would like to go over with you as well. We're going to start with the positives. I mentioned how much I like this neck. I really do like this neck. It's got a really nice thickness to it. And one thing that kind of frustrates me and confuses me as to why Fender doesn't do this. They mention that this is a modern C. They also mention that for the Squier Cabronita thin line. They also mention it for the Player Plus. Now, having all three of those guitars and measuring at the 1st fret and the 12th fret, sometimes there's going to be a little bit of variance, but these were widely different as far as the thickness goes. And I feel like they should provide a a little bit more information and clarity in regards to what you can expect when you get these, because if this was the same neck that was on the Cabronita Thin Line, I might have kept that guitar. Another big positive of this guitar has to be the electronics and the pickups themselves. There was nothing about these pickups that left me thinking to myself, man, I'd really like to throw in some Fralins or some, pure vintage 65 pickups. I thought that these sounded really good through the Mesa Boogie Rectiverb in the room. The other thing that I wanted to highlight was the electronics themselves. Sometimes when you're getting import spec electronics, things like the 3-way toggle switch, when you're actually changing pickups, it can be a little scratchy, it can be, a little loose, it can make a little excess noise. No problems with this one. Everything worked really flawlessly, and that's a really good sign. The rhythm circuit, that was a dream. No issues with that whatsoever as well. So they did a really good job as far as getting that part of this guitar right. Now, I did say that there was going to be some negatives. There's really just one main one with this instrument, and that is the bridge. About 30 minutes into playing this guitar, after I had just set this thing up fresh the way I like it, with a new set of strings on it, stretched out well, I noticed that all of a sudden, when I was hitting the E string about the 12th fret onwards, it was just plinking out. I looked down, the saddles were just lower, and I was like, well, why is that? Yeah. Common problem that I had with the old original classic vibe Jaguar. The actual bridge itself sunk down into the body. Now, there are ways that you can mitigate this. You can use the blue Loctite on the screws once you have your height kind of selected, and you'll be good to go temporarily. That will be a good way to kind of solve that problem in that sense. Or you could replace the bridge if you really wanted to with a Mastery or something like that, but good luck finding a gold Mastery bridge. They're pretty hard to come by. But that being said, it leaves me frustrated because I kept having to adjust the bridge as I was doing it. I didn't have any Loctite lying around, and considering the fact that I get in a lot of offsets, mainly from Japan and American, whether it's American vintage reissues or from the custom shop. And it doesn't matter if it's a vintage bridge or a modified kind of modern Mustang bridge. All of those models that come with those stock, I never have this problem. This is the second time I've had it, and it just happens to be on another classic vibe. It's something that I felt like Fender would have maybe addressed for this anniversary or the newer models compared to the problem that I had with the Jaguar that had the same thing. But apparently they didn't, and this is just still a very common issue that some people might have. And the second part of the bridge that really started to frustrate me as I was playing, because I had to keep readjusting this while I was doing the demo, retuning up to pitch. Once you start heavily using the vibrato on this guitar, this has thick strings on it. I intentionally put 11s. I do not normally play 11s on this, but I remembered from my classic vibe Jag that, the stock bridge, it needs a little bit more onto it, and the initial design of it, in general, you can get away with lighter strings depending on the bridge and the neck and how modern kind of the guitar is built. But for this one, I just thought I would solve that problem by putting on some thicker gauge strings. It really didn't do much for it. The bridge would kind of sit up a little bit or sit back a little bit. It wouldn't always return to 0 point, which would be the point that you tune it to. And so that leads to some tuning problems. And then when you move it back, obviously it's going to go sharp or flat depending on how it went out of tune from the usage. So those two things are things that really bother me, because this isn't something that should be a problem with these guitars. And I know that I said that the Loctite is a simple solution, because in reality, it is. But we're looking at $600 at this point. When this was a $300 instrument, when you started out, I think with the Vintage Modified series, had very similar issues as well. You can kind of take that with a grain of salt and say, it is what it is. It's an extremely affordable guitar at that point. You're creeping up at $600 now. I mean, this should not be an issue. We shouldn't have to do these little hacks and workarounds, or potentially some people, what they'll do is they'll put tape around the actual bridge post to mitigate the second problem that we mentioned about the angle, but that kind of affects the vibrato usage. So I don't know. That's the only two things that really frustrate me with this guitar, but they're valid things, and they're things that when you're actually playing, you do notice and you do have to deal with. Now the problem here becomes, Fender are very clever, and especially clever when it came to how they priced this instrument. When you look at competition from the Fender Player Series, specifically the Jaguar and the Jazzmaster, Those two guitars are not traditional in any sense of the word. The only things that they really have in common with the traditional Jag or Jazzmaster are the vibrato system, and I think the Jaguar has the rhythm circuit. The Jazzmaster does not, and it also has humbucking pickups. So if you want something that's more vintage flavored, more vintage aesthetic, you're either going to go with this or you're going to pay now double that to get a Vintera. And at that point, I don't know. I think I'd rather have this than the Vintera, if I'm being honest with you, because there's parts of the Vintera that I would also want to replace. So why not start at the lower price and not have to go through the hassle of doing the same thing for a more premium instrument? So my final verdict on this guitar is, if you want a traditional kind of themed Jazzmaster that has the Jazzmaster pickups in them, not humbuckers, and more traditional kind of appointments to it, this is as good as you're going to get from Fender at this point. Even if you buy one of the classic Players used, those are technically P90 pickups. They're not traditional Jazzmaster pickups. The J Mascis, which is another guitar that I speak very highly of, same thing. They're not traditional Jazzmaster pickups in that guitar either. This is as good as you're going to get, and when you look at the Player series, like we talked about before, this is much more to the original design than that is. So I guess to each their own. If you want something more modern, maybe a Player is a better choice from you. But if you're somebody like me, you don't mind putting in the extra little elbow grease here to work on the bridge. I really wish that I remembered that I had that problem with the Jaguar. I remembered to get the thicker strings, but I forgot the blue Loctite. I could have avoided a lot of kind of stress here while I was filming the demo. You deal with that, you got really nothing else to complain about with this guitar. Pickups sound great. Everything functions really well. Love the thickness of the neck. You throw on some Gorgamite or you polish the frets for any way that you feel comfortable with, or have somebody else do it. It plays great. No complaints, no tuning problems if the bridge were to work as it was intended. However, that's all I have for you guys today. Now, if you check in the description of this video, I do have a Atonement affiliate link that you can purchase this guitar new. And I saved this to the end, only for people that would make it this far in. This guitar from Germany, $572. UPS will have it to you in typically 3 days anywhere in the United States. That's cheaper than if you were to buy it new, because if you buy it new on Reverb at the $599, you're paying sales tax on top of that. So you're going to save over $100. If you do decide to purchase one of these guitars, it would help me out immensely if you were to use my link, and it kind of helps support this channel without you having to directly give me any money, and it helps you get a better price on a harder to get guitar that's not really available right now in America outside of the blue. The white one is not yet. I've seen a few of the blue ones on Reverb. You can get it now, you can get it for less. So do with that what you will. I appreciate anybody who has used my affiliate links in the past. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about this guitar, what guitars you'd like to see me do next. I know that I mentioned we have a few other ones coming in, but there's one other anniversary guitar that we're going to be demoing sometime maybe late next week. But it's not a Squier. I have to wait and see what that is. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow for another guitar-related video. Take it easy, everybody.